Millions of Americans have spent the last 3 years being told their student loans are forgiven, then not forgiven, then paused, then back on, then challenged in court, then partially blocked, then something else entirely. If you have genuinely lost track of what is actually true right now for your own loans, you are not alone. And honestly, you have a legitimate reason to be confused, because this has been one of the messiest, most legally contested policy sagas in recent memory, and it is still not fully resolved. Let's rebuild the actual timeline, because understanding how we got here is the only way the current situation makes any sense at all. In August 2022, the Biden administration announced a broad student loan forgiveness plan, canceling up to $10,000 in federal student debt for most borrowers, and up to $20,000 for those who had received Pell Grants, which are given specifically to lower-income students. 33 million people applied within weeks. It looked, briefly, like this was actually going to happen. Then, in June 2023, the Supreme Court struck it down. In Biden v. Nebraska, the court ruled 6-3 that the administration did not have the legal authority to cancel that much debt without explicit approval from Congress, specifically rejecting the administration's use of a law called the HEROES Act as legal justification. That plan was dead. Full stop. Here is what most people missed in the noise that followed. The administration did not just give up after that ruling. They pivoted almost immediately to a completely different legal strategy, using a different law called the Higher Education Act instead of the HEROES Act, attempting to achieve broad forgiveness through a formal regulatory process instead. This became known as the SAVE plan, and this is where things get genuinely complicated, because SAVE was never just a forgiveness program. It was fundamentally a new income-driven repayment plan, one that happened to include forgiveness as one of several features. The SAVE plan, launched in 2023, restructured how monthly payments were calculated based on income, significantly lowering payments for many borrowers, in some cases down to $0 a month for lower earners. It also stopped unpaid interest from piling up on top of the principal balance, a feature that had trapped countless borrowers in a cycle where their balance grew every single month, even while they were making payments. Millions of borrowers enrolled. Then came the lawsuits. A coalition of Republican-led states sued to block SAVE, arguing it was, in effect, an end run around the Supreme Court's 2023 ruling, achieving broad forgiveness through a different legal door after the front door had already been ruled shut. In 2024, federal courts issued injunctions blocking key parts of the plan. And by early 2025, the entire SAVE plan had been put on hold nationwide pending ongoing litigation, meaning millions of borrowers who had enrolled restructured their finances around lower payments, and in some cases stopped paying because they were told their balance qualified for forgiveness under the plan, suddenly found themselves in legal limbo, uncertain what they actually owed or when they would need to start paying it. This is genuinely one of the most important details in the entire saga, and it rarely gets explained clearly. Borrowers enrolled in SAVE were placed into an interest-free forbearance while the litigation played out, meaning payments were paused and interest was not accruing during the legal fight itself. But this pause was not framed as progress toward forgiveness, and it was not guaranteed to last. It was a legal holding pattern, not a resolution. And as of this recording, the litigation is still working its way through federal appeals courts, meaning the final outcome for SAVE specifically has genuinely not been decided. Now, separate from all of this drama, something quieter and more consistently successful has actually been happening the entire time, and it deserves far more attention than it gets. Public Service Loan Forgiveness, or PSLF, has been discharging debt for real people reliably for years. This program, which forgives remaining federal loan balances after 10 years of qualifying payments for people working in government or non-profit jobs, existed long before any of the Biden-era plans and survived the Supreme Court ruling completely untouched, because it operates under entirely separate legal authority that was never in dispute. The program had a genuinely terrible track record for its first decade, rejecting over 98% of applicants due to bureaucratic technicalities, before a series of reforms starting in 2021 fixed major structural problems in how payments were tracked and counted. Since those fixes, the Department of Education reports it has approved billions of dollars in forgiveness for hundreds of thousands of public sector workers, quietly without a single Supreme Court challenge, because unlike the broader forgiveness plans, Congress had actually authorized this program by name decades ago. This is the detail that gets lost in the chaos of the bigger headlines. Not all loan forgiveness is legally the same, and confusing them has caused real financial harm to real people who assumed their situation was covered by whatever the news happened to be discussing that week, when their actual path forward was something completely different, sitting quietly in a separate, more legally secure program the entire time. So where does this leave you, specifically if you are currently holding federal student debt and trying to figure out what is actually true for your situation right now? Not 2 years ago, not what a headline said last month, but right now. The broad $10,000 to $20,000 forgiveness plan from 2022 is dead. It was struck down by the Supreme Court and has not been revived in that form. The SAVE plan's future is genuinely unresolved and tied up in ongoing federal litigation, meaning any information about it, including this video, should be treated as a snapshot of a moving situation, not a permanent answer. Checking the federal student aid website directly at studentaid.gov is the only reliable way to get your current individual status, because that status can change based on court rulings that happen with very little advance notice. Public service loan forgiveness remains legally stable, has an established track record of actually discharging debt, and is worth investigating specifically if you work or have worked in government, education, non-profit, or certain public health roles, because it operates independently of the political battles playing out over the broader plans. And here is the piece that matters most for anyone feeling paralyzed by the uncertainty of all of this. Interest accrual rules, forbearance status, and payment requirements have all shifted multiple times through this saga. Sometimes with only weeks of notice, which means the passive approach, simply waiting to be told what to do, has repeatedly left borrowers confused about whether they owed money, whether interest was accruing, and whether payments they had stopped making were going to suddenly restart with penalties attached. Checking your specific loan servicer account directly, at minimum every few months, given how frequently this situation has changed, has become a genuinely necessary habit rather than an overly cautious one. The deeper story underneath all of this legal back and forth is a real and unresolved constitutional question about how much power a presidential administration actually has to unilaterally cancel debt that Congress itself has never explicitly voted to forgive, versus how much flexibility exists within laws Congress already passed decades ago for entirely different purposes. That question has not been fully answered yet, and until it is, anyone holding federal student debt is in a very real sense waiting on the outcome of an ongoing legal argument that will directly determine what they owe when they owe it, and whether years of payments they already made will count toward anything at all.